And we're going to use the question functionality today. And so there's quite a bit of time at the end for some questions. So please feel free to add in questions that you would like to ask as our speakers go through. We're going to try and move pretty fast. And so we're asking everyone to be quite brief, and that's because we want to hear from lots of different people. It's great to see so many people joining in the conversation, lots of chefs, great to see so many people from around the world, from US, from UK, from Ghana, from Indonesia, really good spread of people joining in, which is awesome. We're also going to be streaming live on Facebook at the SDG2 Advocacy Hub. And so if you do know people that you want to share and spread that out, then please do. So today's discussion is going to explore how can we create a world where good food is a reality for everyone, everywhere, across varying global contexts, gathering diverse voices from around the world. We're going to delve into diversified diets and fortification as two possible solutions to ensure good food for all. For many of us joining today's webinar, we eat nutritious food, delicious and diverse plates of food each day that are packed with nutritious ingredients, from summer strawberries to fresh fish to diverse grains. And good food is something that we will have childhood memories of our grandma's cooking. For me, I grew up in Bangladesh. I watched my nana making fresh roti and paratha to serve with biryani, and it was really amazing. However, there's 3 billion people that cannot afford or access a diverse, healthy diet. That's 3 billion people globally who do not have good food. This can be for a number of reasons: for conflict, economic constraints, climate stresses, unstable food supplies, or affordability. And without diverse, nutritious foods every day, our health is at risk. An estimated 2 billion people have micronutrient deficiencies or lack the vitamins and minerals that are crucial to the body's development and function. And globally, we have to double our efforts to ensure everyone can afford and have access to a diverse diet. So what role could or does fortification play in this? Fortification is the inclusion of vitamins and minerals to everyday food with the aim of improving our population's nutrition. It's been used for 90 years. Fortification has a long history around the world. 30% of industrial milled wheat flour and almost half of industrial milled maize flour is fortified. It's important to know that fortification does not alter the appearance, texture, or taste of an ingredient. Embedded in the thematic area number 8 of the Chefs Manifesto is nutritious food that's accessible and affordable for all. And the Chefs Manifesto believes in advocating to ensure all people can have access to a diverse and nutritious diet, which is why we felt today's discussion is so important. We realize we're all living on Zoom, and so we hope to make this 90-minute discussion as interactive and as dynamic as possible. So as I mentioned, I encourage you panelists to ask questions of each other. I encourage you to share reflections on ideas shared. We're going to encourage the audience to ask questions as well. And we're going to put forward different things to, you can vote on the questions and push them up so that we can try and make sure we get them forward. It is live streamed to the Hub's Facebook page, and we'll later share this on YouTube so that others can join. Please follow the conversation on Twitter using #GoodFoodForAll. And we're going to start off to help kind of frame today's conversation. We've invited a few diverse voices to kick us off with some brief statements on specific themes, from nourishing the future generations in school meals context, to the challenge that prevent us from delivering good food for all, to the role of chefs and farmers in making this a reality. So let me introduce our first speaker. Alison is the Acting Director of Nutrition at the World Food Programme, and is going to speak to us about the role of diverse and fortified ingredients in school meals. So over to you, Alison.
Great. Hi, everybody. Thanks. I'm going to show just some pictures, I promise, not a slideshow, but I wanted to give you an idea of some of the faces behind the work we're doing at WFP. As Paul said, I'm the head of nutrition at WFP, and one of our big focuses is on school feeding For a lot of kids around the world, the school meal is maybe the one meal that they get in a day. In 2019, WFP supported 17.3 million school kids to receive nutritious meals and snacks in 59 countries. Next slide, please. Yeah, so critical to these meals is that we need to ensure that we're providing the right nutrition at the right time for these children so that they can reach their full potential. Next slide. So we're going to start actually in Cambodia, and there WFP was working very much with government school meals in 1999 that slowly transformed from bringing in outside products to really looking at local purchases. So the ingredients are coming from local producers that boost local economies and creates jobs. So what does it take to bring diverse and nutritious meals together for these kids? Next slide. Firstly, we need to find the fresh ingredients. So this is a great example of a smallholder farmer. Next slide. And then we complement these fresh ingredients with locally consumed staples that then we fortified with micronutrients. So on the left, you see that this is rice arriving at a school, and that rice has been fortified, so it's even more nutritious than the rice that is normally available. And then on the other side, we see a teacher who's signing to get fortified oil that she can add to the meals to really make sure that these meals are as strong and as blinged out as possible. Next slide, please. We have examples like this from all over the world. This happens to be in Burundi. Here we see students in a school in Burundi eating their one meal of the day in the classroom. 500,000 kids in Burundi were actually fed through a homegrown school feeding project. Fresh vegetables are paired with fortified flour and fortified oil to help overcome highly prevalent forms of malnutrition, like vitamin A and iron deficiencies, both of which affect learning, amongst other things. Next slide. In addition to fresh and fortified foods, WFP has also worked with local farmers to supply milk. Milk is one of the few sources of animal proteins available to children in Burundi, and it also helps combat stunting, a cruel condition that caps individuals' potential to thrive by limiting their physical and cognitive abilities. So what we're doing is we're seeing that not only are these meals coming in and improving the kids' nutritional status, but it's also encouraging them to come to school, and it's encouraging parents to send their children to school. And what we saw is that in many places, it really has supported the dropout rate and allowed parents and children to attend a full year of school, which we think is really important. So providing nutritious meals not only improves the value of the food basket the kids are getting, but also helps them complete their education. And that's just one example of how we partner. And behind all of these faces, in every single one of the school canteens around the world, is always a chef, or as they call themselves, a cook, who's usually from the community and is trying then to use the local ingredients to make as good a meal for the kids as they possibly can. 73 million vulnerable primary school age children need school meals. So you can imagine the impact we could have if we could always guarantee that all of those meals have all of the vitamins and minerals that kids need to thrive. Next slide. So just to end there and just really to say thank you to all of you for supporting this work, but also to all of our chef advocates. We're really lucky in WFP that we work with this diverse network of chefs around the world. And we've done lots of campaigns like Healthy Not Hungry, What Food Means, United We Eat, Stop the Waste. So we work with these chefs to advocate on matters related to famine prevention and mitigation. And these chefs then allow us to use their platform to make sure that we're thinking about nutritious programs. So thanks a lot, Paul. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Alison, for sharing a bit about WFP's work. And it's great to see some of those chefs are on the call today. And so we're going to be able to hear from Chef Nayata and Chef Arthur a little bit later on. Really great for you, conversation so far. I'm going to jump ahead and continue on some initial conversations. So I'm going to jump and invite the Director of Nutrition, Andreas, from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, to talk to us. And it's very early for Seattle. So thank you so much, Andreas, for joining. I hate to even ask what time it is, but I see it's dark. And so I appreciate you joining us. But I'm going to ask you to talk to us a little bit about the role you see large-scale fortification and biofortification playing in delivering good food for all. Over to you.
Thanks, Paul. And I would like to thank also the chefs and WFP and DSM and the Advocacy Hub for having me this early morning from Seattle. And it's a pleasure for me to be here because I think it's important to contextualize fortified food. So let me clearly state at the beginning, from where I come from, also from my education, micronutrient accessibility and affordability is a human right. So adequate nutrition is part of the economic, social, and cultural rights worldwide, and for a good reason. No hunger, zero hunger is a sustainable development goal, because micronutrients are simply essential for life. If you don't have that, it impedes your health. At the end of the day, you fall sick, and you will not have, for example, the education you need to live a productive and healthy life. We're talking about vitamin A, zinc, iron, iodine, and folate to start with, the most essential micronutrients. And poverty is one of the main reasons why people cannot afford a balanced diet. We are all in agreement that a balanced diet is the best thing you can do to your health and your life, in particular if you are still an infant and growing. And there is no silver bullet, however, because a balanced diet is still a luxury for a large part of the 7 million people living on that planet. So we have different interventions in nutrition. Promoting a balanced diet, I think, is always important and is king. If people fall deficient, and Paul mentioned there's 2 billion of that, supplementation, supplementary food, special fortified food, treatment, these are the things you think about, but there is a path to prevention, and fortified food is seen as a preventative approach in health in countries where there is a significant public health problem with micronutrients. And this is the reason why we should look at fortified food as a proven intervention that increases nutrient density, where the purchasing power maybe is not there to buy a fortified diet. And we talk about salt, oil, and flour, for example. These are the foods poor people eat anyway. And that's the beauty of fortification. You add micronutrients at the milling process or at the farming process with biofortification. And then you don't need a big behavioral change. The food travels with the micronutrients to the poor and the vulnerable and the prevalent in micronutrient deficiency, and there does its good. And let me underscore, the interventions are interrelated. So if there's vitamin A deficiency, for example, iron absorption is impeded. So it's important that we reach a lot of people that potentially then can benefit from other nutritional interventions. Let me also clearly state advocacy and diversified food understanding and knowledge in the target group is also very important. And therefore, everyone who talks to people, explains nutrition, which is complex, helps to afford a balanced diet, also based on fortification. So what needs to be done? 45% of the child deaths worldwide still depends on micronutrient deficiency, but only 1% of the funding is attributed to nutrition. We at the foundation are currently working on our new strategy and are having approval on that, and talk with partners like World Food Program. How can we jointly step up and be extremely intentional in the countries on what we do? And social security schemes, any form of institutional buying like school feeding are very important channels to reach the undernourished, but there's also the general population. And look at this also as a gender topic. It's often women that eat the leftovers from a family meal. It's often rice, it might be grains. And if these are more nutrient dense and are intentionally carrying micronutrients like folic acid, we even can reach the infant which is not even born in the 1,000-day window. So I think a principal flow of micronutrients at a dose that prevents deficiencies and attributed disease is really important to reach the most vulnerable, even the unborn or the breastfed children. Because if the mother's status in, for example, vitamin A is sufficient, breast milk and breastfeeding transports the right amount of vitamin A to the infant. So it's a multi-sector approach. It's at the end of the day, the food mills in the developing countries that need to do the job. So there's a big role for the business community, but also civil society, consumer groups, at the end of the day, government framing and mandating and defining the levels of fortified food. And that's what makes it personally for me so interesting, I have to say, over the last 15 years to work on fortification, that it's not possible to do it alone as one sector. We need to come together. We really need a framework defined country by country, meeting the needs of the population. And we need also to understand, with more innovation in data, we need to understand really well where foods are fortified, where they maybe not fortified, just pretend to be fortified. And we need better quality assurance based on that data to make sure that in particular where poor people are shopping, the informal markets, the cheapish products, that these have the quality people deserve for a healthy and productive life. Thank you.
Thank you, Andreas, and thank you so much for your contribution, and we're looking forward to having some conversation later with you and hopefully some questions. So feel free, if you are adding in points and questions, please add them in. And so we will have time later to be able to answer them, but also some of the speakers will be jumping into the chat box and trying to answer any questions. And we've got some of the specialists around diversification and fortification on here. So if you have a technical question, if I see a question there about programs running in Bangladesh at this stage, somebody will jump into the chat and be able to help answer that. We're now going to jump ahead, and we're going to go to the heart of the Chefs Manifesto, is this understanding about how chefs can really be influencers and can play a leading role in inspiring positive change through our food system from farm to fork. And we've got Chef DK, the founder of restaurant Homa, that's recently added a new ingredient to the menu of fortified rice. And he's joining us today. He's not feeling great, so we're going to just have a very short interaction with him. But we're going to just show a short video. So Chef DK, we're just going to show a short video of just your experience with fortification. Do you want to just say anything just before we put the video on, and then we'll just go to the video?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody, and everybody's in here and everybody who's watching. It's my pleasure to be here today. I'm sorry for the delay and just under the weather a little bit. In my experience with fortification started a year ago, where I realized that, like me, millions of other people were not aware of what it really was. And it hit me like a storm, because I realized that it was a game changer. And I took that product. With Paul's help, we collaborated with GAIN, the Global Alliance of Nutrition. And we then went ahead and visited fortification factories, and it was happening under my nose. Fortification was happening 100 kilometers away from where I live, just in the heart of the industrial centers of Chonburi, an hour's drive from Bangkok. And I realized that it was everything that we needed, everything that the global hunger problem needs. And I am all about it. And we are using fortified foods for a program that I run called No One Hungry, where we've already delivered over 200,000 meals to migrants who've lost their jobs. And also recently started with around 1,000 outlets of 7-Eleven to be serving a chicken tikka masala made with fortified rice, so that the people who don't have access to good nutrition can actually spend only 59 baht or $1.70 to be able to get a fortified meal with obviously a delicious spicy chicken tikka masala on side because I've got my picture in it, so it has to be spicy. Paul knows that. so that being said, it's been a great journey of what I've learned about fortification, and I think it's only the tip of the iceberg. With going forward, what we are trying to work on and do is that different populations in the country here in Thailand have different requirements. For example, the people in the pregnant women in the Chiang Mai province are the ones who are the most gullible. Children that are being born with massive deficiencies of vitamin B12. So folic acid is directly related. We are looking to fortify our biryanis and chicken tikka masalas with vitamin B12 for that region, as compared to, say, in the Bangkok region, if the deficiency is of vitamin A or vitamin K, we would fortify it as such and target specific populations to be able to benefit them the most, rather than just generalizing. And in the video that Paul's going to show now, that is something what we did, and spoke to Bin, who's from Netherlands, and he's a professional in this field, and he's helping us develop that as we go. So please go ahead, Paul, if you want to show the video.
Yeah, thanks, Chef DK. Just before we put it on, I just want to say it's so great hearing you talking about fortification. When I remember when we first talked, you were asking me so many questions, and now you have so much knowledge that you're sharing about fortification and how you're engaging with it, and it's absolutely
amazing. Man. Paul, it's so interesting, and I'm diving nose front into it to be able to help as many people as we can.
Well, let's put this video on. Thank you, Chef.
Please go ahead. My pleasure, please.
As a chef, my number one advice to getting through a crisis is to stay calm, be patient, and cook. Cooking nourishes your soul. I am Chef DK, Dipankar Khosla. I run a restaurant called Haoma, the most sustainable restaurant in Bangkok. I'm not just saying it, you can go look it up. My main objective in cooking for anyone is basically two things. I cook for the food to be delicious and to make it nutritious. No matter which part of the world you were born in, which caste, creed, sex, or religion, does not matter. Our bodies need to be nourished to be able to keep going. Malnutrition is one of the biggest problems in the world right now. Rice is eaten across the world, like West Africa or Southeast Asia, and Thailand is one of the largest exporters of rice to those places. Carbohydrate is being provided through the rice, but what about the nutrition? What about the vitamins, minerals, and other micronutrients that are essential for the body to function day to day? Today I'm off to the Fortification factory to find out why fortified rice is one of the most cost-effective and efficient way of increasing the nutrient value of peoples across the globe. Hey, good to see you, man. Nice to meet you. How are you today? Ben, thank you so much for showing me around. This is amazing. And what I really want to know is why fortification?
Yeah. No, rice fortification is a real game changer, right? It's really there to help fight hidden hunger.
Right.
So people eat a lot of food on a daily basis, staple foods, right? So they do get the calories most of the time. But it doesn't mean that they also get the micronutrients they need. So
that's correct.
Fortifying the staple foods that they eat can really help fight hidden hunger.
That is amazing. And this is the answer to malnutrition globally.
Absolutely. 1/3 of the world eats rice on a daily basis. So rice fortification is a real game changer.
What is that there?
So this is the vitamin and mineral premix, so the micronutrient premix. We research which parts of the population need what kind of micronutrients.
Okay.
We adjust the formulation as such. So in this micronutrient powder gets blended with the broken rice powder.
Yeah.
And it comes out looking exactly like this.
So not only is the product so cost efficient and so quick to make and nutritionally so high, it is also custom and tailor-made to populations.
Yeah.
This is amazing. This is mind-blowing.
So welcome to the lab.
Thank you.
So we can add a whole range of micronutrients.
Yes.
If you look at the minerals, we can add iron.
Right.
If you look at the vitamins, folic acid, really important for pregnancy.
Right.
And then we have vitamin A.
Yeah.
We can add B vitamins.
Right.
So it's really dependent on what the population needs. Our rice gets blended 1 to 2% with the final product.
Yeah.
And hence the consumer is going to eat rice which is 99% normal rice.
So just 1% gives them everything that they need.
Exactly.
Amazing. it's quick, it's cost effective, it's highly nutritious, then why does the world not know about this bit?
No, you're exactly right. It's astonishing to see that only 1% of the world's rice is fortified.
Yeah.
And yet, everywhere where people eat rice is the prevalence of hidden hunger.
Yeah.
So it's a no-brainer that we should do something about this.
1%, I must be missing something here. Does it taste bad?
No, actually, there's no taste change. But you're the chef. Maybe you can.
I'm going to take some back and I'm going to let you know how that goes.
Exactly.
Okay, lovely. Just got back from the Fortification factory and it's been a real eye-opener. I didn't know that fortificated rice was so nutritious, and yet less than 1% of the world really knows about it. Now let's see how it holds up in the kitchen, eh? I'm going to experiment with fortified rice. Not only cooking high-end dishes in my restaurant, but also for the No One Hungry program, where we cook hundreds of meals every day and give out to those who need. It's going to definitely create an impact because it's highly nutritious and it can help better lives. Let's see what the guests think about this. There is no reason why fortified rice should not be cooked in the best kitchens in the world. It can't harm and it can increase the nutrition value, so why not, right?
Yeah, I like that.
Thank you. Thank you, Chef DK. And it's really great to hear from you and also to see that snapshot of your experience with fortification. So we're now I'm going to invite Christine Campu, the Senior Advisor on Food Systems at CARE, who's going to talk a little bit on the state of nutrition and agriculture globally. Great to have you in your early morning and some of the barriers that prevent us from delivering good food for all. So over to you, Christine.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. 3 billion people globally cannot afford the cheapest form of a healthy diet. It's an estimated 272 million people that are at risk of becoming severely food insecure worldwide. And beyond that, those who produce our food are always the first to go hungry. Inequalities are embedded in every level of the food system, and they were there long before the pandemic. These inequalities, whether they are between gender, cultural, or racial lines, shape those who have access to food and those who do not, those who have food on their table and those who go hungry. Food insecurity and malnutrition are not accidents. They're results of social and economical systemic inequalities. Women, particularly in the global south, feel the effect of these inequalities in the food system most. Most women farmers play a vital role in every step of the food system, from planting to harvesting, to water collection, to deciding what to prepare for themselves and their families to eat. However, they often eat the least and the last. And while rural women produce 80% of the food consumed in households in developing countries, they make up less than 20% of smallholder farmer landowners. Women struggle not only to secure land titles, but to obtain the credit and insurance, to purchase seed and equipment, and to access agricultural training. This gender inequality does not only harm women, but it harms the entire household. Countries where women lack land ownership rights have an average of 60% more malnourished children. When women are empowered, however, entire communities are lifted out of poverty. Research shows that if women had equal access to rights such as land rights, they would yield at least 20 to 30% in increase, and an additional 150 million people annually could be fed. What we've seen over the past year is that the pandemic's effect have had the most unequal effect in countries and communities where pre-existing inequalities already existed the greatest. When COVID-19 began, quarantines, distancing, and other lockdown measures disproportionately disrupted local and informal markets, while formal markets were largely left unaffected. In developing economies, the vast majority of unemployment is in the informal sector, and most people rely on those markets both for their income and their daily food supply. These localized disruptions caused food prices to spike, and had a detrimental effect on the food insecurity in the global south. At the onset of COVID-19, it was predicted that the average income loss for a single developing country would exceed $200 billion. That has only been exacerbated by global income inequalities, which in effect turns to food insecurity. And we all know that women have felt this reality the most. It is an estimate that women's jobs are at 1.8 times more vulnerable to this crisis than men's jobs. CARE's own research confirms that women are the first to feel this income loss. And income loss means that there's less food on the table and that this food is often less diverse. In America, where I'm currently based, food insecurity is not a food supply problem, but rather an income problem. In one of the richest countries of the world, it is unacceptable that we have a high level of food security within our own borders. Unemployment has a direct correlation with the prevalence of food insecurity in the United States, and unemployment spiked nearly to 15% during the pandemic. So food insecurity soar as well. And while food insecurity doesn't discriminate, it does disproportionately affect the communities of color. It is predicted that more than 1 in 8 Americans will be food insecure this year. Yet this reality doesn't affect everyone equally. Within communities of color, food insecurity is experienced at 2 to 3 times normal than non-Hispanic whites. This is due to large parts of the legacy of systemic discrimination within this country and the uneven way that cities and landscapes have been shaped to concentrate the impact of economic loss, leading to the concentration of food deserts and swamps. In America's capital city, this couldn't even be more clear. For example, in one neighborhood in Washington, D.C., just down the road from me, there's 92% Black and only three full-service grocery stores for over 160,000 residents. Yet, the stark contrast, just across the river, there's 50% of residents that are white, with 12 full-service grocery stores for only 75,000 people. These communities also experience the highest rate of obesity and type 2 diabetes, because obesity and food insecurity often go hand in hand. Ultra-processed food is often the cheapest, most easily available, and aggressively marketed. In one of the most prosperous capitals of the world, this should not be the reality, nor should it be the reality in anywhere in the world. We are all part of this global food system, and each of us has a unique opportunity and responsibility to create a more equitable system with affordable, healthy, sustainable, and nutritious food for all. As chair of the UN Food System Summit's Action Track 4, it's CARE's role to ensure that we serve as antennas to pick up solutions to advancing equitable livelihoods so that all people can feed themselves and their families with dignity. We're challenging people to work together and to generate the necessary momentum and drive to increase policy and financial commitments to improve people's livelihoods and diets. Thank you very much for inviting me to this conversation today.
Thank you, Christine. And thank you so much for really sharing and hinting at fortification being a temporary solution to breaking these intergenerational cycles of malnutrition. I'm going to now, no conversation around food is complete without farmers, the guardians of our land, who are the front line of our climate crisis and growing good food. Simply put, good food begins with farmers. And Cherry is the CEO of Agrea, an innovative, inclusive, for-purpose agri-business from the Philippines that's founded on sustainable agriculture, and an amazing person involved in so many different initiatives. Cherry, let's hear from you. How are farmers thinking about diverse and biofortified ingredients for their livelihood, nutrition, and environmental impact?
Yeah, thank you so much, Paul, for inviting me. This is such a good privilege, to share our work. And I'm so inspired actually listening to all the speakers. Coming from Agria, I will share to you some of our stories that we work with the grassroots. My social enterprise, Agria, we work right now with 30,000 smallholder farmers in the Philippines. And these smallholder farmers are actually, also the consumers of their food. Unfortunately, though, the producers of the food are also the poorest, the hungriest, and the most malnourished. And for me, it's such a crime against humanity. For 23 years, I've been working in the agriculture sector. I've been fighting for this cause on how to actually treat our farmers fairly. So when I started a company, Agrea, I really put the ecology of dignity, because this is about dignifying the stakeholders in the food supply chain, more importantly, our food producers, and also our consumers. So what we have been doing in the company so far, our company is actually known for climate resilient cropping system, but more importantly on diversification. So our focus is really working on smallholder farmers and family farms, because we believe that if you want to make everyone healthy, agriculture is the foundation. And we also strongly practice that agriculture is both food creation, at the same time income generation. You know, the farmers do not listen to you about sustainability and about this nutrition if they're hungry, but more so we also acknowledge the fact that farming is actually very important, because you know this is the foundation of our food, and food is the umbilical cord of everyone to Mother Earth. So how do you balance the act of producing food, making everyone healthy, at the same time it's just to our farmers and it's very inclusive? So for the longest time, you know, working with the grassroots in the Philippines, we actually try to work with a lot of women in the food supply chain, more importantly on our food processing, at the same time on the grassroots level of farming. In our farming approach, I think I will share practical ways. For example, we're known for nutrient dense agriculture, wherein if a farmer has a hectare of land, this is actually a typical case in Asia and in Africa, or even in Latin America, right? This is, you know, a lot of places in the world are needing this kind of intervention. So if the farmer has like a hectare of land, how do you make it sufficient for them that they have healthy food on their table, but at the same time they have enough income to send their children to school and have a roof on their head? So in our model, we try to encourage our farmers to do diversification in their cropping. For example, in the Philippine setting, we have 20 to 21 typhoons every year. And it seems like it's so hard for our farmers to actually stand up after every typhoon. So we work with the staples in the Philippines, for example, rice and coconut farmers. We know coconut is such like a hotshot product or commodity in the world. Unfortunately, I want to pop some bubbles here. Coconut farmers are the poorest farmers. In the Philippines, they're only earning $60 every 40 days, because that's the only time they can harvest the coconut and they make it into oil. Unfortunately, that's been the trend for so long. It's been century of that trend. So what we do in diversification, if a farmer has 100 coconut in a hectare, we plant superfoods. So for example, we focus on ginger, turmeric, a lot of root crops that are healthier, like yam of different colors. Because when there's typhoon, at least, you know, they still have yam and other crops that they can sell and they can put on their table to eat as a family. Another one in the diversification, it's not about only on giving them stages of income in a month or surviving climate change, typhoon after typhoon, but it's really how to put color on their plate. So every farmer engaged in our company, they basically have design a letter of intent that each household should practice nutrition, farming, at the same time healthy diet. So we encourage them, especially the women, to plant vegetables around their house or around their farm, to also encourage to take care of organic chicken so that they have a little bit of source of protein, but at the same time to really process their food properly. Another intervention that we're actually doing is we have a farm school. We always believe that education is such a powerful tool to educate people how to eat healthy. Because even the farmers without education, every time they harvest their produce, they sell it. And whatever money they receive, they go to a market and buy processed goods that are so unhealthy for their. So it's always like breaking my mind seeing a lot of farmers putting their produce on a truck, and then they go to a market and buy, you know, canned goods and other unhealthy products. So it takes a lot of education and mindset change and behavioral change on the ground, because a lot of our work really is how to understand the mindset and behavior of these people, right? Why are they exchanging their fresh produce to something processed and healthy, and it's so cheap goods? So most of the time it's really behavioral. The moment they feel they can afford to buy food in the market, they feel that they're successful in life. But in our farm school, it's necessary when they enroll in our farm school. Nutrition is such a foundation of our education curriculum. we try to educate, especially the women who are actually cooking food at home, and also the youth, because they are the future of our generation. Another one, we also engage a lot with the government because of the UN food systems, right? I'm actually advising our government on how to commit to this in this endeavor. And lastly, it's not only about educating our farmers, educating the people in the value chain, but more so we're engaging chefs in the Philippines to actually engage in sourcing local and educating the people to eat the local food that we have. Because we as Filipinos, somehow it's been for the long years, we love to eat what is imported, but it develops a lot of diseases in our body. So right now we're really transitioning on sourcing local, supporting our farmers, eating healthy, eating food in season, and at the same time, concern about planetary health, how you can put balance on your plate. So there's so much discussion about this one, but on the farmer level, we're so happy that with the intervention on women, as Christine mentioned, right, they're the first to plant, the first to harvest, but the last and the least to eat most of the time. So with our women intervention and education, from 3% women involved in our work, right now we are at 63% in the last 4 years. And we're so happy that more and more women are changing their ways on not only adding income in their home, but more importantly is changing how the way they cook, the way they prepare food for their children. So far that's my sharing, and I'm so happy to entertain questions later. Thank you so much, Paul.
Thanks, Cherry, for sharing. And let's invite a couple of the presenters that have just presented. So Andreas, Alison, to come back, and then also Chef Arthur Potts-Dawson is with us, and he is a chef ambassador for the World Food Programme, and well known to all of the Chefs Manifesto network. So welcome back in, Chef Arthur. So Chef Arthur, as the new face in this conversation, just hearing from some of the opening remarks, what surprised you about the discussion so far?
Hi, Paul, and hi to everyone. Some of you in the early hours, some of you later on in the day. Nothing particularly surprising. Food fortification has been going on a long time. What just worries me a little bit is that from a resilience perspective, relying on fortification for grains, for flours, for salts, for sugars, could mean that we get a little bit lazy in the overproduction of very poor grains, white rices. Sometimes we're taking everything out of the wheat, taking away the husk, taking away the brown, taking away the roughage, and then having to add in what we've already taken away for the process. So should we be eating white flour? Should we be eating brown flour? So from a chef's perspective, I'm a little worried that if we are going to go back to soil and seed, then we should be looking to connect to nature for these micronutrients and nutrition. However, I fully understand that fortification of rice and milk powders, sugars and salts across the world is leading to serious improvement in malnutrition, etc. So I just, not surprised, but from a chef's perspective, we need to look at food from all angles, not just saying we need to fortify everything and let's move on.
Yeah. No, I think, and if you do have questions and comments, I can see Chef Tom also talking, agreeing with you, Arthur. But if you do have questions and comments, we're going to be having a short discussion now, and then we're going to be bringing back a slightly different panel and then everyone. But I want to see any reactions from those on the panel. Maybe Alison, if you want to jump in.
Yeah, I'd love to jump in. First of all, shout out to Chef Arthur. Hi, and thanks so much for your work. Yeah, I think that the truth of the matter is I couldn't agree more. The number one thing that we need to think about for sustainability in our planet is how do we increase food diversity? How do we make sure that all communities, wherever they are, have access to nutritious foods? And I think that this idea of, there's a lot of work going back to traditional foodstuffs, but also looking at the non-processed versions, exactly as Chef Arthur's talking about, whole grains, etc. I have no problem with that. But the problem is when you look around the world and you look at different contexts require different solutions. And, you know, the fact is take something like folate. I mean, that's essential for pregnancy, and it's too late if a woman starts upping her folate levels once she's already pregnant. So how do we look across a population group? So I think that I just would rather not get caught in a binary. I don't think it's an either or. I think that if we're going to do anything about world hunger, if we're really going to think about nutritious food for all, we've got to be willing to program whatever the context throws at us. And, you know, Sherry was just giving us a really beautiful version of not just the farmer that produces this food, but how the farmer themselves eat. And if she is not able to feed her own family with what she's growing, either because of how we're paying her for the labor that she's doing, or because it's actually better for her to sell everything that she grows and then buy less valuable crops, there's a problem in our food system. So I think that the key here is that we see fortification as one tool in a toolbox. And I have to say, as somebody that is sometimes on the front line of delivering emergency food assistance, I would so much rather that that food is fortified than not fortified, so that that family has a chance at normal growth and development. But I think that all of us, and I'm really so glad to see someone like Chef Arthur at the front of this, we need to talk about diversity, and we need to talk about making sure that good food's available for everybody, and that we're actually eating food and not just strange ultra processed goods.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think also, just quickly, we have to be careful that we don't allow big companies, naming no names, that put processed foods into packets, use fortification as an advert for their product to say, well, I'm giving you salt, fat, and sugar, but hey, I'm putting folic acid, or I'm putting vitamin A or D or something into this. So therefore, I'm advertising and using it as a tool to advertise. A quick point about to my journey to Ethiopia with the World Food Programme and looking at the school feeding programme there and how they connect to the localised growing systems. Connection to soil and the health of the seed, and how the seed grows with both water and how it's harvested. We're giving plates of food to children who are hungry, and it kept them alive. But the biggest conundrum for the World Food Programme in Ethiopia was, how do we deliver micronutrients into this environment? And so, you know, fortification and also adding to and getting nutrients into children. There's a good point made yesterday on one of the Chefs Manifesto events, was that Professor Donald Bundy said that food aid is a concept, but we need to be looking at nutrition aid and how we can get now, if we're getting food to people, we need to put nutrition into it. So maybe it's fortification, or maybe it's a more diverse set of ingredients. Yeah. But I appreciate, Alison, what you say is that there needs to be, you know, fortified foods that are in the conversation, but we also need to push for diversity.
Okay, I'm going to keep the conversation going. I think this is exactly the kind of thing, and I think, Arthur, thank you for raising some of the critical elements. I'm just going to go to Andreas. Any reaction? One minute reaction, and then I'm going to go to Cherry. And
yeah, let me just build on what has been said by Arthur. I mean, it's about food and nutrition security, and I think we should really start to talk about nutrition security interrelated to food security, but it has a specific agenda, and it needs a specific agenda, and specifically vitamin and mineral deficiency is something that can be extremely actionable if we do it in the context of now the upcoming Food Systems Summit, understanding that is embedded, an embedded solution that is contextualized by diversified diets, by joint communication on nutrition. I mean, making people understand nutrition, being very specific and intentional about specific target groups like school children, like social security beneficiaries, and again, rice. I mean, should be on every plate in countries with high prevalence of micronutrient deficiency in these sponsored meals, let's call it that way. There's governments that need assistance. Nutrition and nutritional status is not an easy thing to assess, and then, I mean, have the right science at hand to take the right decisions with a lot of stakeholders. So we are looking into helping governments to set the right frameworks that private sector and individuals can then take action. And I think it's a great journey. Understanding nutrition is fascinating, and I think we should really go into that with a fresh spirit of dialogue, learning before we do action, because it's really multiple constituencies with multiple roles, farmers, mills, providers of premix, programming stuff, and I said also consumer groups, to make nutritious food also a commercial pull factor where people understand that they want to have their food in the right quality. And even if it's fortified and it's affordable, I think that's a functional food that can make wonder over a person's life and become a main factor in social equity too. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Andreas. Cherry.
Yeah, my comment on that is because, we work with a lot of farmers, right? For us, it's still really on how to diversify the food on their plate from the first harvest that they have. Because for me, I think not only in Asia, but even in Africa, with all the UN food systems dialogues I've been attending, it's always the farmers not understanding that the food that they harvest is actually the healthiest source of nutrients, right? And another one, of course, fortification, it comes in different contexts and different setting. So for example, like, I observe usually even in Asia, we use a lot of salt. And if, putting something, fortifying salt is actually quite of a game-changing solution for me, because it's really a consumption that everyone consumed every day. So it depends on context, and it depends on the need and the situation also.
Yeah, absolutely. Arthur, any reaction to conversation, further comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think the salt and the iodization of it is an interesting one and an important one, and showing the level of salt that are used there. What's interesting, though, is to see that in the Philippines, quite a lot of the salt that is used is imported, and in the importation, it's not going through the process of being fortified, and therefore the salt is being used quite dramatically, but not being picked up through the supply chain, and fortification is not actually happening. So, who manages this fortification? Is it government level? Is it private entities? And are there safe limits?
Absolutely. We're going to keep moving. So please, if you can stay with us, panelists, stay. We're going to hopefully bring back in people. Time's tight. But really appreciate this dialogue and these contributions. And I think what I'm picking up from this is that there is just not one answer. It doesn't need to be a binary, as I think you said, Andreas. It's not an either or. It's looking at a toolbox, as you said, Alison, a toolbox of activities and ideas that can be used in different contexts by different players to really drive change. What we're going to do now is we're going to look at what does this look like on our plates. And so I'm going to invite Chef Anayata Dondi, and she is an amazing chef from India, a good friend. And Chef Anayata has created a dish around the themes of the conversation. And I'm just going to get her to introduce it and then take us through the video that's there. But please introduce yourself and your background and the dish that you've created, and then we'll go to this video.
Good evening, everyone. It's the evening in India, so good morning or good evening. I just want to quickly give you a perspective on fortification, especially from a chef's point of view. And I think this is really important because we are in the middle of, right in the middle of food system, where we can make an impact on what you consume and how you consume it. And I know that we are influencers in not just your digital space, but also in restaurants where you come and eat food. So I loved what Chef DK has been doing. I did see his video previously as well, and I really, really liked it. And obviously what Chef Arthur was talking about in terms of diversification and fortification, which both need to kind of go hand in hand. A little bit about myself. I'm a chef from India. I used to run a restaurant for 8 years. I recently quit, and I'm doing a lot of things currently, but my book is coming out next month, which is most exciting. But I have been part of the Chefs Manifesto for the last 3 years, and I am happy to be sharing a lot about biodiversity in Indian ingredients from my kitchen. And today I want to share a recipe with you on fortification, and especially on fortified rice. But before I do that, I want to just show you something that I have with me. So this is just regular basmati rice, which is something that's eaten all over the world, comes from India, and is even used in our kitchens. But in India, we have multiple varieties of rice. This is just one of the most popular ones. And what I didn't know is that there is something available in the market, and that's why I'm really excited to share a recipe with you on that, is that you can actually get a package of fortified rice, which you have to add into 5 kgs of rice, which looks exactly like rice, like what Chef DK was talking about. And all you do is you just add it to your rice and you cook it the same way you would cook it. It doesn't have any impact on the taste or the flavor or the look of the rice. And for me, that was fascinating as a chef. So I think it's about recognizing that, there is a potential where you can get the right micronutrients, and rice is something that's eaten in India at least once a day. I mean, every family eats it once a day. And sadly, I was just reading a report recently, 6,000 deaths in children because of malnutrition and a micronutrient deficiency, out of which 50% was because of the not getting the right kind of nutrients. So I feel chefs can make this impact and actually make people use this, because there is a misconception about fortification. And as soon as you start using it in the right way, your communication is clear, people are educated, they will be happy to use a fortified product, because they are anyway popping vitamins and minerals as medicines, as extra nutrients. So just getting it in your food with a tasty dish, I think would help it. So we've got a recipe for you and we're going to share it with you. Hi guys, I'm Chef Manifesto Thematic and welcome to my home kitchen. I will be teaching you a simple and easy recipe of what we make at home in India. Now we use rice quite a bit, but we don't use fortified rice. And today at the Fortified and Diverse webinar, I'm going to be teaching you a simple vegetable palau recipe. So I'm going to show you the ingredients and let's get cooking. So for this recipe, you need some sliced onions, you need some whole spices, some chopped green chili, some chopped green capsicum, some boiled peas, ginger garlic paste, local and seasonal bottle garden pumpkin, red chilies, and all your Indian masalas. We're going to be using basmati rice, and we're going to be using DSM's Nutritious Power Mix to add all the micronutrients required. The first step that we need to do is use the Nutritious Power Mix and add it to our basmati rice. Read the instructions on the packet and mix it up. Wash your rice well 2 to 3 times and then drain out all the excess water. In a pot, add a little bit of oil and I'm adding my whole spices: bay leaves, cinnamon, star anise, black pepper and green cardamom with some cumin seeds. Into this, I'll be adding dried red chilies, roasted for a couple of minutes, and then add the sliced onions and ginger garlic paste. Mix it up with the green chilies till well and sauteed. Into this, we'll be adding salt, red chili powder, turmeric powder, cumin powder, and coriander powder. Mix this up well, and into this mixture, we'll be adding our bottle gourd and our pumpkin, green capsicum and our green peas. Make sure each vegetable is nicely coated with the masala. Stir it well and let it cook for about 4 to 5 minutes. Into this mixture, we'll be adding our washed and drained rice. Mix it well and make sure your rice is also coated with all the masala. And into this mixture, we'll be adding our water. Double the amount of water to the rice. Let this cook for about 15 to 20 minutes till all the water is soaked up and your rice is beautiful, fragrant and fluffy. Plate it up and serve it warm with a little bit of coriander, yogurt or dahi as we like to call it, and some pickle. Vegetable palau is ready. So So I hope you guys enjoy this very easy recipe from my kitchen. It's something that we eat very, very often in India. It's a vegetable palau with a little bit of curd and pickle. It's absolutely delicious, and I've added the DSM Nutritious micronutrients into my rice, which will make sure that I don't have any micronutrient deficiency. I hope you guys enjoy this recipe. Do try it at home.
Wow. Absolutely beautiful dish, Chef. I'm hoping that on the next Zoom update, we can have a taste testing function and maybe some smell as well, because that looked amazing. So I'm going to ask you to stay, and I'm going to invite in also Chef Elijah. Chef Elijah is a Ghanaian chef who founded Food for All Ghana. And we're going to get him to join us, and also Foko from DSM, who is the Vice President for Malnutrition Programs and Partnerships at Royal DSM. And so we're going to have a little bit of a discussion. So maybe I'll start with you, Foko. You've been listening to the conversation. What's a takeaway that you've picked up so far?
Oh, the takeaway is, of course, the last one. Oh, as you said, we do need to do smell and taste. So I think, it's very clear. The biggest takeaway is it can be aspirational. Fortified foods and nutrition in general can be aspirational. And I think, we can't be dictating or be intrusive on someone's choices and freedom. So we have to convince and nudge the consumer into aspiring to good nutrition. And next to that, we need to get the producers to make good nutrition widely available and affordable. Not necessarily cheap. We have to be careful, because sometimes people believe that more expensive food, and everything is relative, more expensive food is better. So we need to strike the right balance there with regard to pricing. But I think it's very clear that it is a matter of work on the aspirational side. You heard Andreas talk about the science. You heard him talk about, of course, traceability and how we need to make sure that what we promise is also delivered. But it's the consumer who buys not nutrition. The consumer buys taste and wants to buy goodness, wants to buy something that's good for a family. And that's what we need to combine. Actually, the rice that you just saw, we use organic rice to also make sure that we link as much as possible to where the consumer is in India. And so we try to be as close with our fortification solutions to where the consumer is.
Can I ask, before I go to you, Chef Elijah, Anayat, how did it taste? Tell us how it tasted.
So actually, I just wanted to, I wish I could make you taste it and I could send it to you, but it's a bit far for delivery. Nevertheless, I just want to tell you that this is a dish that is such a staple in India. I use pumpkin and bottle gourd because that's what's in season right now with, the spices that I use. And someone asked me a question, was the salt and the oil fortified as well? Yes. Most of the salt and oil in India is, fortified. We use Tata Namak, which has got iodine, and we use oil, which has got fortified with either vitamin A, B, etc. And what I was shocked to see is that there's not as much conversation, education regarding fortification, even though micronutrient deficiency is such a big problem in India. And I just feel like this conversation has to go beyond our restaurant kitchens into, soup kitchens or cloud kitchens and, school kitchens, where children who actually need the folic acid and iron and, vitamins, there it can be used. And preparation of rice is actually very simple because we make different rice preparations every day in India. So it's just about the flavor, and there was no flavor change. So it tasted as good as, the recipe that I would make without any fortified rice. So that actually gave me a lot of confidence to kind of use it in my home cooking, which I haven't been. And I'm sure a lot of people around me also don't, use it. So that gave me a lot of confidence.
That's great. So you were speaking just a little bit about feeding programs and these kind of things. Chef Elijah, you're running food for all Africa, or for all Ghana. And you're running a big feeding program. It's doubled in size, I think, as a result of the COVID crisis. And you're also thinking about how to use some of the fortified rice. Tell us a little bit about your program and just fortified ingredients. How have you been thinking about them?
All right, thank you. Good afternoon to all our panelists and attendees. Fortification in Ghana, actually, on a commercial base, started somewhere in 1990, when Ghana at the time had a huge cases of goiter. So we passed the law and we started fortifying iodine salt. So we had started having iodized salt. Then commercially, some corporate entities started, but product acceptance on fortified products over the years had not been to that core, and the reason being that there isn't much information, advocacy on fortification. And with us, where we run West Africa's first and largest food bank, and part of our programs is a lunchbox school feeding program where we're providing daily nutrition to over 6,000 school children across 5 regions in Ghana. Most often, the case we come through when we're on the field, before we bring on some schools or school children onto our program, has to do with issues of malnutrition, issues of accessibility, and then affordability to food products that are fortified, and not just fortified foods, but even availability of other food ingredients to complement. So we've been pushing for some time now on the inclusion of fortified food products into some of our programs, and not just our programs as well, to also lead an advocacy on the importance of fortification. When the issue of fortification is raised, most often in forums, what the corporate entities have said is that once the idea of people thinking once the product is fortified, it loses its natural taste, it loses its natural flavors, it loses its natural nutritional value. That is where the challenge is, and there must be
Jeff, I think you've frozen. Chef, I think you're frozen. Whoop.
A massive campaign, leading a massive campaign towards that. And for us, we believe fortified product, in this case rice, can go a long way in ensuring that the diet of most of these children that we feed through our lunchbox program will be helpful. Yeah.
Thank you, Chef. And a question to you all. So what do you think are some practical actions that consumers, chefs, farmers can play in ensuring this access to affordable, tasty, nutritious food? So how can we, what are some practical things? Boko, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, no, absolutely. If some of the things, so if you a couple of very practical examples, we've invested in Rwanda, where we produce fortified porridge for young children and mothers. We reach now about 2 million people in Africa with that. But at the same time, because we buy local, we get 130,000 smallholder farmers a better livelihood, get them out of poverty. That means we have 130,000 families that could buy better food, send their kids to school. So the whole change that we want to achieve is food has so much potential in feeding people, but also creating jobs, creating livelihoods, building climate resilience. That is certainly an area that we need to work on. And the other example Anahita also already showed fortified rice as a consumer product, we are looking into India, where that's the country with the most malnourished people in the world. And we're looking there for consumer solutions, aspirational consumer solutions. I think as industry, we can do more. Look into how can we make affordable, but at the same time, profitable solutions. We need governments to come in to build a trust around that, to keep everybody sharp and on the ball, to have safe food on the shelves. And we need to have the consumer, we already spoke about it, we need to get that the consumer to understand the importance of this. So I think those are a couple of very practical things. We work with the World Food Programme. Alison was already earlier on the panel. Scale. The problem is big, we need to scale the solutions. We work with the World Food Programme and help the World Food Programme bring nutrition in their food basket. And we are reaching now 35 million people with improved nutrition. That's the sort of practical things that we need to do together.
Wow.
Look at large scale solutions.
Yeah. Chefs, any thoughts?
I just want to jump in quickly and just a few thoughts. When I was listening to what Arthur was saying, I just wanted to, talk about the fact that what happens with us is, and especially because we want people to be eating fortified ingredients, we start talking about it. And we should not just be focusing on one particular fortified ingredient. So in India, we actually have rice, but we also have a lot of millets. We have different rice varieties like red rice or brown rice. Obviously, we have white rice, but we have a smaller rice variety in the south. We have a larger rice variety in Kashmir. So it's super diverse, as a country. And I'm only talking about India because we have those many ingredients. So it's important, yes, to get fortification to the right people who need it, and to the masses, like you were talking about, and making sure that it's on a larger scale. But because of this, we should not be losing out on our biodiversity, and making sure that we still continue to eat other ingredients as well. And that's where moderation in choosing the kind of ingredient that you want in your kitchen. So it's very important to have that mix. And like I shared in the recipe, that, with rice, if you're doing this with rice, you could also do it with other ingredients. So it's important to have that balance.
Yeah. And I
Absolutely.
think,
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I think one of the things I loved about the recipe as well is that you use so many ingredients. Like you showed a recipe with just the diversity of vegetables and ingredients in there and flavors. And I mean, that's obviously something very common in Indian cooking. But it's also, something that we need to think about everywhere as well, that it's not just about taking, a tablet and that gives you everything you need. But I think part of the role of chefs is to educate how to balance that out, and fortified ingredients can play a role in meeting that as part of it. So Chef Elijah, any thoughts?
Yes, I think in the process of pushing fortification to the people who really need it, there must be that conscious effort in terms of corporate entities or companies that work within fortifying most of these products can have to go down to the masses, looking at the distribution channels that they use in sending this food products, fortified food products, to the people that really need it. By so doing, it can really benefit the people who need it, because accessibility is very key. The places and the people that need that fortified food will improve their health benefits is quite critical. And I think one case we can look at is using stakeholders like the district assemblies, district health facilities, district marketplaces to promote the distribution of fortified food products.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to invite all our panelists back on screen in just a minute to get a closing comment, but I have one question from the audience, which I want to just pose and see if somebody wants to answer. So it was, how do the panelists fight against the economic marketing power of multinational food companies hiding behind fortification while still delivering poor quality food, salt, sugar, fat. I'm not sure if anyone wants to talk about that, because I think that's often one of the critiques is that some people do this badly, some people do this well, but how do we work in a positive way to talk about fortification, and also at the same time maybe limit some of the bad examples of fortification, which I think then cause customer eaters to feel confused. I think that's really part of that. I don't know if anyone wants to jump in on that. We've got
yeah, sure.
Okay,
sure. No, I think it's very important. You know, it's very important we have the consumer who goes to the shop and might be confused. So I think it's important that we make a split between how do we encourage choice for the right product. So what do we do in choice influencing into the right space? And we spoke now with chefs who have an important role. The other part is choice editing. At one point in time, we need to discourage the bad and encourage the good, or at one point in time, take it off the shelf if things are really bad. We don't want unsafe products on the shelf. So that means also a strong collaboration with governments and a strong position of governments to do the right things for their citizens. I think that's an important one. One concern I have, it's not linked to the question, but a concern that I would like to share here is I'm concerned about the poorest. And I think both chefs already spoke about it. The chefs are not necessarily the key opinion leaders that the poorest will look at. So we need to find key opinion leaders where the poorest get their inspiration from. And how do we reach the poorest to make the choice for the right products, the diversity of products, as well as the fortification of products.
No, that's great. Andreas, do you want to just build on that? And then we're going to go around for a final question.
Yeah, I think there's a distinction between commercial fortification and public health driven fortification. And when we look at the public health and survival markets, most of the fraud is coming from either ridiculously low levels being added, like 5% of the RDA, and then it's labeled as fortified. And I mean, there's losses in preparing it, in cooking. So that's just meaningless. And I mean, it looks like a long list of micronutrients, but in some, I mean, it's no contribution. But on the other hand, you have products being mandated to fortified, and they just aren't. I mean, there's a logo on it, there's promotion for it. And I mean, companies just don't participate. And it's often imported food that comes unfortified to countries. And I think that's something where we really need to empower industry and government to make that transparent, to name the companies that really, I mean, participating and doing a great job for populations and people, and also start, I would say, to take action on those who are threatening the lives of millions of children. I mean, let's face it, if you would sell a drug that just has no active ingredient, I mean, you go to prison. If you sell a food that governments and others have agreed to carry key micronutrients and you don't, it's, I think, not just a business attitude, it's something really worrying and concerning. And I think we need to really empower with technology and commitment, really making transparent what is fortified and what isn't, and what maybe shouldn't be fortified because it's taken care of.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is really critical. Okay, we've got I think 8 minutes or something before we're wrapping. I've got one question that I would like you each to just comment on, and then we're going to wrap. Arthur, did you want to say something? I'll give you 30 seconds.
Only that you're saying what can chefs do, and what is it, you know, how can chefs generate leverage? You know, your point, Foko, about you know, the most hungry not making decisions based on, you know, celebrity chefs or chefs even pushing forward with their narratives, but remembering that chefs need to apply pressure and then can enforce, you know, and be empowered to lobby different governments and different organizations, because I know that hunger is big business. And some countries, and there's a political angle to this, some countries make a lot of money, or you know, let's say producers of food items make a lot of money by selling them into countries who are hungry. And, you know, obviously these items will need to be fortified or in some way being given a boost to people who are struggling to get food and to not be hungry. So my point is that, okay, maybe the people who are eating the food aren't the ones that are going to be listening to potentially the power, you know, what the chef has to say, but the chefs are now having a voice where they can lobby both parliaments, governments and big business to say, stop making hunger big business, and, you know, stop being politically motivated or financially motivated, and build in better food solutions for people who are hungry.
Thanks, Arthur. This is a conversation I wish we had allowed 2 or 3 hours for, but we know everyone's busy. This year is the UN Food Systems Summit, and there's a lot of other activations going on. I'd like to hear from each of you in under a minute. What do you think is one change that could be made by the end of 2021 that would accelerate accessibility and affordability of diverse diets in some way? So how can we move this forward? Who wants to go first?
Focus on the consumer. I think that's for me the key thing. We need to change the focus from farm to fork to a fork to farm approach. I think that is for me the key thing that we need to do in this year. That will make a big difference if we influence the choice.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, maybe I'll come in just building on that. I mean, I gave a talk on Monday for the Demand Generation Alliance. This idea of empowering the consumer, empowering people to make good choices. I think that that one thing that the Food Systems Summit needs to ensure is that the voice of the people in the communities is being heard. And I think that that's the people across the spectrum, from the producers to the retailers in the small markets to the consumers themselves. But we've got to empower people, and sometimes that empowerment is through information education, and sometimes that empowerment is also putting some money in people's pockets so that when they go to the market, they actually can afford the healthy and nutritious foods we're talking about. But I think that it's got to be a people-centered approach.
Yeah. Building on that, I think one critical point we need to have a look at is imbibing in the young ones the knowledge about what fortification really means, because most often when we are thinking about bringing about change, including the younger generation that also serves as the future, is most often overlooked in a process like this. If the young child we are thinking about, because the issue of fortification as well centers around malnutrition among children. And so if the education or knowledge of what goes into fortification, they benefit from it, it goes a long way to ensure that the next generation is in the know as well.
Yeah, thank you, Chef. Who wants to jump in?
Yeah, I'll add to that. I think, since we're working with the smallholder farmers, it's still a big problem actually to educate them. So it's really about rallying the academe on how to include nutrition now as part of the curriculum, because we're just brushing it off, right? In all the curriculums in our educational system. In Asia, it's a big game now to review all the curriculums, because it seems like if you study a subject or in school, nutrition is just like a page in the curriculum. So now it's really changing the curriculum, that nutrition is a basic requirement and a prerequisite to actually progress in the schooling, from elementary until the tertiary. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Cherry. Andreas, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, what to wish from out of the Food Systems Summit. I would wish myself, or wish for all of us, that the international organizations and the governments get empowered and encouraged out of that summit, that a few very specific things can be achieved. Fortification in the context of a broader nutrition agenda needs a home in government planning, for example. It needs a home having a budget. It's fragmented over several ministries often in a country. There is no Ministry of Nutrition, and it's of so high importance that we need good collaboration. And I think if the UN and the civil society organizations under the roof of scaling up nutrition really align themselves on the country level even better, I would say, and governments are really receptive in partnering with business on making fortification happen. That goes well, and we can kind of elevate fortification to the level where we really reach the poorest of the poor sustainably, with systems which are owned at the country level, and countries are empowered to understand these systems and steer them. That would be my long-term vision, which hopefully can be fueled by the Food System Summit and basically all attending there. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Andreas. Arthur?
I just would like to say that from a chef's perspective, I think we need to make sure that we're not promoting lazy food. Oh, fortification's here. Okay, let's just cook white rice and everyone can eat it. I think that from chefs, we've got a position to now say, right, but there is a complexity around food. There's diversity. We need to build in resilience. Climate change is coming. We need crops that are going to be resilient to heat, drought, overwatering, pests. You know, and what and how are we going to become resilient with our future food systems? So from a chef perspective, and Anita, you've always talked about millet, we've always talked about oats, we're talking about healthy plants for healthy bodies, healthy minds, and healthy planet. Fortification is there because in some countries we don't have the right vitamins and minerals in people's diets, and there is an essential need for folic acids, etc., for mothers and people who are anemic maybe with iron. But other than that, we need a resilient planet, and chefs have got a great voice to say to people, this is how you cook great food.
Thank you, Chef. And Chef Anita.
Yeah, just adding on to whatever I've heard everyone speak, just from personal experience, I feel like a lot of, there's a big gap between talking about nutrition and actually putting that down on a plate. I just actually want to see that happen, more of it. So like Arthur was talking about the fact that, you know, it should not just be lazy cooking. It shouldn't just be like a, you know, pot of boiled rice. Obviously, if it's fortified rice, it will be better for you. But other than that, we have to protect, you know, our diversity, and we have to talk about nutrition, because honestly, people don't know, and I'm talking about all walks of life in India particularly, nutrition is not spoken about enough, and it honestly needs to be constantly like put into children's heads and their parents' heads how important nutrition is. And we do have all the resources. It's not like we don't have a diverse, you know, a country which is diverse in so many ingredients and so many healthy ingredients, like I've been talking about millets. It's just that we want things which are convenient. We want things which is fast. And that's why we're kind of shifting away. So I think we have to shift our focus onto nutrition and make sure it actually comes on the plate.
Thank you, everyone. This has been a great conversation, and it's been really, really good to just hear the diversity of voices and perspectives. It's great to have so many different actors in the food system talking together, but also talking about the roles that they each play, and talking about how this comes together into a system. And so, you know, I think our goal is good food for all. And, you know, we want to ensure that through a diverse diet that can include fortified foods, and fortified foods are not bad. They're not the only way to go, but they are a tool in the toolbox that you talked about, Alison, to really meet a need, and they can play that role. And so hopefully for the chefs and others that have been listening, you've just got some of your questions answered, some of your questions started to inspire you to go looking for more information. Hopefully you want to go and look for more information. We've got a number of different blogs on this topic. I know any of the chefs would be happy to talk about this as well. And have, you know, try and debate the discussion, but, you know, go and find out the information, find out what's going on in your space, learn more about nutrition and how you can play a role in that. And we'll share the content here. Thanks to DSM and to WFP for partnering in on this event, and to all of our speakers. We will be putting a recording live on Facebook and YouTube, and we'll also be sharing some blogs in the future, just talking about some of these questions. So please feel free to keep engaging, and thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Bye.
Thanks, Collins. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.